typical diner, and the only thing I wanted to point out is right up here on the diners, for those of you that didn't know it, that's how you were able to tell that the diner was, it had 3 small narrow windows. And the other thing was is that up at the top above the windows is they would have chimneys. So you had all these smooth passenger trains, and you could always pick out the diner, so you knew that there was food on board. That's why I wanted to mention that one. I think we go up one.
Go to the center one.
Center one? Center. Oh, that's, this is the back one, okay. Okay, it's a perfect job of employment for me for 1962 and 63. Actually, I only worked 1 day in 64, including travel. I met an awful lot of people. I saw the sites, sorry, and also some of the world. Coffee shop, lounge, Builder, Western Star, and about towards the end I make a comparison between the 2 railroads, just from my perspective. I don't know how many of you, if you want to just give me a show of the hands, rode either one of the cars, the trains? Okay, actually quite a few of you. Well then, please make notes when I'm making my comments, which one was better or worse, or were they actually in fact very similar. Okay, let's go on to the next one. I'm going to start off with this so that for those of you that haven't had a chance to get back in a dining car, you can see and you can understand some of the hierarchy of it. This we can say is this one right here we're going to say is the chef. This is a typical dining car layout. This particular car right here is what we call the heavyweights. They were built in the early 20s, 22, 24, somewhere in there. And looking at the size of the knives and the clothes that they had back then, that's when this picture was probably taken. Anyway, there's 1, 2, 3 people in this car right now, and there's 4 of us, and I think the 4th guy was taking the picture. Anyway, the positions were, so you can understand, was the first guy was the chef, we're going to call him. He was the one that was a supervisor. He oversaw everything. He made sure that the food that came in, because there was really a small area for the preparation of the meal, and they had all those, we found out, or counted up to close to 400 people could be on the train. We had to feed them out of one kitchen like this, so we were really, really busy, and I'll explain how some of the work, how we had to get things together so that there was a good teamwork. That's the only way it could happen. And anyway, the first guy, like I was saying, was the chef himself. Very knowledgeable. He was responsible. He had other positions on the train besides just being the chief cook on the train. He was responsible for more. We'll get into that in a few moments. And he was the one that set the pace. He wanted a clean, safe kitchen. And because I was the dishwasher and I was the one that scrubbed the floors, I was the lucky one that got to have conversations with him if something was missed. We were always wiping down the walls, the stainless steel walls. We were making sure it was clean. No one could slip. We had a very, very close tolerance there for the 4 of us. And he would check on you once in a while to see how you were going with your dispersing of foods and so on. The second guy was a second cook, and he was the one who did an awful lot of the heavy work. And he would do the major meal preparations. If there was any fishes that had to be cooked, they can be delicate, as you probably know, and you have to make sure that you're cooking them properly so that they're cooked all the way through. And there were salads that would go along with them. He was the one that would, he was actually the busiest guy, the second cook out of all of us, insofar as the major meals were concerned. And that was for the passengers, specifically on the Empire Builder, because they were really fussy about what they wanted. The next one is the third cook. The third cook here, short order, and he was the one that I worked with all the way down in the hall. He was the one that would prepare the short order items, such as in the morning the bacon and eggs. He would go on with the toast and prepare that, and baking the eggs. We had the elevation, for those of you that traveled on the train. Depends upon whether we were taking 3 minutes or 5 minutes to cook your eggs. You had to know how to take care of that so that you had the right eggs out. And of course, in the last one was me, and I didn't do anything other than wash dishes, so that was wasn't much. Okay, so here we're going to look at the pantry side. This is the other side of it. And this is where the waiters would come in, and they would stand in this section right here, and they would call this section, this is a pass-through between there, and that section actually is the hole, they call it. And my job, I thought, was nothing important. I thought it was just I was going to be washing dishes all the time. It turned out, actually, I was the echo, and because I was the echo, and I had a pretty good memory at that time, when the waiters would come in, we had somewhere where 3 people would be saying the order at the same time, and you had to sift through them. We didn't have fights or anything like that, but it was just an awful lot of confusion. It was delay of time. Once we got into the trip for about a day or two, and everybody saw who was working and who was not working and so on, we got into more of a teamwork approach on it. Okay, well, that's the way the kitchen was set up and the people in it. So we're going to go back to my first day. And I don't know how many of you have been down in the St. Paul Depot, and you saw at one time the William Crooks was in there. Great looking locomotive. It was built in 1861 and first ran in 1862. And it turns out that I didn't know this, but it was the 100th anniversary of the Great Northern Railroad. And so I just happened to cross a newspaper article that said that it was the anniversary, and they covered it. They made the statement that it was right down here it says, the only time we look back in 100 years, they wanted to talk about it, so that has a little bit of ego in it. And then they came along and they said, the next 100 years is for the same service. And we also noticed that less than 10 years, they were no longer around. But anyway, I grew up in the East Coast and the South, and there was an awful lot of museums with steam locomotives like this. And I enjoyed seeing this. It was like seeing an old friend. So I was happy to see him every time. So every time I came down throughout the years, I always said hello to the general. Okay, what I did after I said hello to the general, then I had to get down to where the train was, and I ran down, brought in my case, set it in the kitchen. I told the chef that I was here, and I ran down to, and it's amazing that I was able to get this photograph. Stu Holmquist. Stu in the room here? No. Nope, okay. Anyway, he sent me this picture, and the beauty of it is right up here, it's got the 1, so that's actually was taken in St. Paul. And so that's the picture I see all the time. And to add to the adventure of it, the thing was going, it had a real fast idle on it. And I thought that the engine was talking to me and telling me that you guys, we're in a hurry now, because we got to get out to Seattle, because this was the World's Fair. We're going to have the fair there. The president was going to be there. We had to go out and see him. We were in a hurry. Well, somebody who's sitting in this room also, I won't mention his name, he said, oh no, that's what was going on. They were just building up the water pressure. But anyway, I was impressed. Have to learn these things. The thing I liked about it too is that the locomotive actually was this color, the Omaha orange and the Pullman green. I just love this photograph. And it's also a neat picture because it's the first E7 500, as you all know, and it was picking up a message as it goes by, revealing the steel, spectacular, striking, beautiful, new age, sparkling colors of Omaha orange and Pullman green. I still love the colors. They're just fabulous. I'm glad to see some people in the room here who have some orange on. It's just beautiful. Very, very nice viewing. Then we go into the actual kitchen itself. That first picture I showed with the men, that's, interestingly, I've been looking on this thing for 3 months, only picture I could find of men in the kitchen. They kind of figure they were kind of back and hidden in the corner or something, and, oh, sorry, yes. I get carried away.
Can't hear you.
Yep, sorry. This is what the kitchens look like of the trains that I worked on. Is the shiny, clean, sanitary, and safe. And that's what we wanted to do on the railroad. Now, what we've got next is we've got a view over here, and a buddy of mine came up here and he put this one, we can use this one as an example. This refers to the kitchen right here, and we've got the same view right up here, the kitchen. This one right here is a side view of it, and if you look right here, here's the 3 guys in the kitchen. And if you go over here, you see that this is the pantry area. This is about a 20-foot spread right here with probably about 8 feet across, so it's a very narrow area. The reason why I want to take some time with this is just to show you that this is where I was right here. This is the hole. And right up there where my hat is there, those are the drawers right there where the plates would go in. So when we were done cooking and washing, we washed right in here where the tubs are. When we were done with that, we'd have to pick them up out of there, and we had to put them up into these drawers right here. And the big thing was they had a sliding panel in front, so they would keep them in there when you're going around open. You've been on trains, you know how they move back and forth a lot. And a lot of times you could hear them hitting the drawers, so you knew that there was keeping them in there. There were 3 times in my 2 years where the 4th cook had taken the plates out and was putting them in, and they were going down the track at wide open speed, and they hit an opened switch or something, or the track was open, something like that, and threw all the plates in and crashed on the floor. And there was one time in the middle of dinner time when this happened, and we were just getting ready to serve out our main meals, and instead we had to use an awful lot of saucers. There was an awful lot of unhappy customers because the service was not that good. But anyway, we had a reasonable excuse for it. And the thing was that I looked immediately from the 3rd cook standpoint to the chef when it happened, and I was looking to see if there was anything that was done incorrectly. And the 4th cook had done nothing wrong. It was just one of those things where he was loading and hit that switch, open area, and then all the things fell down and broke. But I was the lucky one that got a chance to go ahead and help him pick up the mess. Okay, then we go on to the actual meals themselves. This, for those of you that collect meals, menus and so on, you know that this is from the 1955 builder. Reinhold Weiss, I think is the artist's name. He did an awful lot of painting. They're beautiful, very, very nicely done, detailed pictures of it. And this particular one is for lunchtime, and I wanted you guys to kind of think along with me on how we track these things. I took this one as an example because it was simple. You can see right down, see right down here in the bottom, the ordering process. There's 3 entrees over here, steak, and then there's the
Lamb chop.
I can't see that. Lamb, there it is. And then over on this side we have the bacon and the other 2 items right here. And so we have a total of 6 items. What I've done is I went ahead and I listed them over on this side. Here's all the items that we've got. And I don't know how many of you worked in kitchens, but usually people go ahead and they want to write things down. They're saying if we write them down, then it's going to write. The problem is with writing things down is it takes time to do that. The Great Northern, as I understand it, and anybody tells me otherwise, that's fine. It'll be my first time I've heard it. But I've talked to people who worked for the NP and they worked for any other trains, Sioux Line and so on, with their passenger services. Everybody else would write everything down. We were a little bit faster, we were more efficient, and the thing is that I found out is that there was always kind of a group think, there was a teamwork was going on, which was really, really nice. So people would have these different entrees come in and put in the order, and it was all verbal. My echoing was verbal as well. And I could watch some of the cooks when they would put it into their memory banks as they would utter the words, so they were burning it into their memory. So the question that I'm asking all of you is, okay, well, you've got 6 items right here, you've got 48 people outside, you got to feed them in 1 hour. How are you going to be able to track that? What are you going to do? Can't write it down, what are you going to do? Memorize it, right? Somebody said memorize, exactly. Okay, that sounds simple, but you got 48 items floating around in there. Who's got what? Who's going to take care of what? Well, obviously it took some pre-planning. What would happen was the chef would say, I'm going to take these, or the second cook, I'm going to take these 2 The next guy says, I'm going to take these two, and the next guy says, I'm going to take these down here. And that way they split them up. And that's the only ones they listen for, and those are the ones that they would pick on. Now the question becomes, okay, well, if you've got 10 different orders, how are you going to be able to keep track of those orders once you receive them in and once you disperse them out? How do you do that? You can't write it down. Memory again. There are different systems that I talk to different cooks to find out how should I do it, which is an easy way to do it. They say, well, the first one in, then I just count one. And the second one come in on the next one, I count two. And so I always would say, on this order, I had 3 orders. And then as I started delivering, then I would subtract. Another guy told me that the way he tracked it, I don't know how many of you have worked on spreadsheets. Sorry. I get kind of excited. The taking care of the spreadsheets, they're a square and you have a box. So what you would do down one side, you would put the actual items, 6 items down there. And then across the top, you could go ahead and you put in how many numbers you got. And then inside of each individual box, when you're dealing with something like steak, you can have it rare, you can have it medium, you can have it well, medium well, you can have 6 different choices. So you have your little grid sheet, and you would have these different choices down there. And to me, it got real complicated when I first heard about the idea. But as you work it for a while, then you find out this is the way I can keep track of things. This is the way I can do it. And it was amazing how fast and smooth it worked. It really was slick. And it's what I first saw on the builder, and I liked that. And then they were doing the same thing on the Star. So it was a very eye-opening experience, and it was good to see that happen. Okay, we're still on the first trip, and we were working like crazy. This is going through one of the towns. And finally, we made it to Seattle in 1962. Time, does anyone have the time?
3:33.
Sorry?
3:33.
3:33, okay. Good, we're halfway mark. This is my halfway mark. Okay, so we're on time. So we made it to Seattle, 62, clean and new, modern fair of the future. Anybody go to the fair? Oh, there were some of you. Fabulous, fabulous. You'll like my story. We went to the fair but had limited time, so we did the whole fair backwards. I don't know if any of you guys were there and saw us running through backwards. You know what the meanest thing that anybody said when we were going through backwards to us? What would they say today as contrast? Back then, what did they say? Hey guys, you're going through backwards. I'm not kidding. Yeah, today would be totally different. Okay, and then after we were through going through that, then we had the cook that I was with. He had been there several times. Again, for those of you who've been to the Seattle Fair, you probably know about the Chinese dinners in the back, and you go up 3 floors in the back, and you can go into their kitchen. Any of you ever have a chance to do that? Anyway, it was just a nice touch to be able to have that. I was wondering if they were still ongoing now in Seattle. We had heard that President Kennedy was there speaking. He opened up the fair, and it was we had come to the future. We really had a great time with that. Okay, so we're all done with our work, and we would have a gathering spot. As I say, I grew up out east in the south, and I was interested in the waiters, what they were doing, and this is where we used to gather in the banquet. There was one particular chef. He was the head chef, and he was an older gentleman, and he was always speaking with a British accent. I thought it was kind of funny to see somebody working on the Great Northern speaking with a British accent. And it turns out he was the professor of the English Lit department for the University of Washington, working in the railroad there. And what he did is, I was listening to him. I don't know how many of you enjoy Shakespeare, but some of the passages I picked up on. And finally he said, well, here, let's do this. And he took out of his pocket and he handed me a complete works of William Shakespeare. There, you can get those down to a 1 book size. He says, give me the play, the act, and the scene. In other words, which act it was, the number, and the scene, what number is. And then he started repeating from memory. He would go on for 5 minutes, word after word after word. I don't know how many of you guys in the room here, I'm some ladies, sorry. How many of you have have that kind of memory. I don't have that memory. I was absolutely astounded, and the whole time I was running with them, I kept asking for more repeats. I think I remember Double Double, Toil and Trouble, Cauldron, Burn, Boil and Bubble. I don't know if you know which one that's from, but anyway, it's one of the Shakespearean. That's as far as I got it. Anyway, great people, a lot of fun, and we enjoyed our time working with them. This is a very classic shot of the builder going through the mountains, beautiful. And as we talk about the builder, as I say, I worked on the builder for, let's see, a total of about 5 different times. We also, those of us, I had an issue with temperature in the kitchen, so I asked to be moved over to the Western Star. It was a dormitory baggage car that we slept in. And there was room for the dining car steward. I don't know how many, anyone in the room is steward or new stewards? They were the ones that actually were in charge of the dining car, so they had their own section. And then they had bunks for the crew, and then there were sanitary facilities with showers. And the 4th cook slept on the top bunk. That was me. And I don't know if you've ever been in a dining car and you've had a chance to see how much clearance there is between your head and the top of the actual top of the car. It was probably about 3 or 4 inches. And so the train was moving back and forth like this the whole time. And of course, I get in there, I don't care if it was 10:30 at night or it was 2 o'clock in the morning, I couldn't sleep. And there were times I didn't sleep for 2 or 3 days. Sometimes I didn't sleep the whole trip. It was just because there was so much action in the car. So when I get home and that happened, I would go to bed and sleep for a day or 2, and I woke up fresh, and I kept going back for more of it because it was a pretty exciting job. Okay, and this was the dormitory car that we used, and it was a good car, but it was really busy. There was a man in here by the name of Bob Kelly. Bob, you here still? Here's my question, Bob. Tell me who this lady right here is. You said you had some association or affiliation with the Minnesota Historical Society?
That's my task, huh? To find out who that is?
Well, if you don't know now, if you have a chance, I would like to, and I myself thought it was male only the whole years. Here I was probably about 4 or 5 months ago, I came across this picture, and I says, who in the expletive deleted is that particular person? Outside of the fact that she's pleasantly looking and she's making the railroad #1 dessert, which was apple pies with cheddar cheese. You probably all know that one. But if you can find out who this lady was and how she got in there, I'd love to know. Unless somebody else knows.
Betty Crocker rode with.
Sorry?
Betty Crocker.
That's the day that Betty Crocker rode with on it.
Oh, okay, thank you, that's good, that's good. All right.
I'm sure it's just a publicity still, not working on the railroad, because she has, none of her buttons are tied on her smock. So it's probably just went over her, it's just a publicity still.
You think it's just this
No,
publicity?
that's not, no.
Okay, we still have a sacred,
I think you're fine.
okay, thank you. But you want to notice the pies down here. Just another quick comment on the pies. When we were going into Washington or we were coming back east, sometimes we would get fresh fruit. And the difference is that apple pie once you cooked it, the apples would retain their flavor, and you could continue serving the apple pie 2-3 days into when they were originally made. Whereas if we had any berries, one of my favorite was loganberries. Anybody ever heard of loganberries or tasted them? Yeah, I try to get them every year, and I was hoping to be able to have them for us today, and they just don't make enough and freeze them and can't ship them. So anyway, the fresh fruit pies would last for 1 day. We would make them in the morning, and by the afternoon at the evening meal, we were out of them every time. So I'm looking for someone to tell me where there's loganberries. Is there a question?
Did you get flathead cherries?
Sir, cherries?
Did you get flathead cherries?
I don't remember that name, no.
That's a pretty big crop out there in Flathead Valley.
Okay. Maybe that wasn't available when we were running through there, but if it is now, it'd be nice to know. I'll have to remember that name. Okay, So what had happened was is that I went from the, let's say, I started off in the builder, and it turned out one time I was in the builder, and I was standing up, and we were the kitchen in the Empire builder had an air conditioner. You put your hand up there, and your hand would get cold. Anyway, I'm not real tall, but I'm kind of tall, and the thing was that I'd stand all the way up in the kitchen, whether I was the fourth cook or the third cook, didn't make any difference. When I'd stand up, I would start sweating an awful lot, and there's a whole bunch of jokes about how much sweat you can put in the people's food and so on. We got lectured about that. Don't do that. That's not something good to do. Anyway, I stood up. I hadn't noticed it before because I was so busy working. But all of a sudden, I just happened to glance up there, and right in front of my face was a thermometer, and it said 135 degrees. And I said, I don't feel that good. And after that, I put my head down, and I went back to the head dispatcher, Emmett Dixon, and I told him, I says, that's just too hot for me, I'm really tired from it. So that's the reason why I moved away from the Empire building, because I asked to go over to the Star, and then when there was some slack there, then I went back and I worked on the builder in the ranch car. So that's how I worked on those. But anyway, this is going to be the ranch car itself right now. This is just a placemat that they had. I thought it was kind of colorful, so I put it in for us. And the thing that happened with the ranch car is that it was an awful lot easier structure. You could work with people. You didn't have so much pressure all the time because you had 1 hour and you had almost 50 people to feed. And there was an awful lot of back and forth.
Your mic?
Oh, sorry. I'm back in 1962. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, well, enough of that. I won't get excited anymore. Let's see. Railroad coffee here. I don't know how many of you heard about railroad coffee, any kind of coffee, and then they say they have this specific flavor that they can cut down, and so it's a smoother blend. I heard about that many, many times. And I asked specifically, not all the people on the train said, I don't know. Is it halftime? Okay. So I said, well, what's the secret? The only secret they could come out with that was that you had to have eggshells. And the way you ground up the eggshells, you put them in the coffee, and that would cut down on the acid. Now, I don't know how many of you have had a chance to have a smoother flavored coffee through putting in anything, including eggshells. This is the only one that we used and tried. Again, we're doing some scenery cooking. This is a nice classic shot here. But the scenery cooking, I think out of all the times I ran, I probably did it 2 or 3 times because I heard the story about the fellow that stuck his head out looking in St. Paul Depot, and when they were moving cars back and forth, and he was killed in that process. So I was always on the aware, don't stick your hand or your head outside. But anyway, the thing that was nice about being out in the mountains, as you well know, that's fresh and cool, and it's got kind of a pine scent to it. Very, very invigorating. Then we go to the coal burner. This was the car, this particular car actually is not, if you look right over here, you can see the tracks. This was on tracks, just happened to be piled next to some railroad ties here. So this car was active. That's a photograph from, I think, 1967 or something like that. But you look at this, the kind of windows that they've got, they're narrow, but they're not round. So this is one of the early ones that had the chimneys somewhat hidden. And this is the dining car that we would work on when we had 30 cars behind us on the Western Star. And the reason why we had 30 cars, because the standard train was 16, 17 cars, depending upon how they run around. We had extra baggage cars, and we were picking up individuals who were veterans, I believe, of the railroad, is that correct? Veteran people that they would pick up. And so we had all these extra passengers that were coming in, and we had to go back to the old heavyweights. And the way the heavyweight was worked, and that's the reason why an awful lot of people got out of the military and went to work for the trains, is because before World War II, all of the stoves in the dining car were coal-fired. And when they came out with the 1947 Empire Builder, they were gas, and all you had to do was turn the nozzle and you had instant heat. It was absolutely fantastic to be able to just turn that heat. Anyway, I'd never worked on one until halfway through '62 when we had all these extra individuals. And I don't know how many of you have tried to light a fire in a dining car with you just burning coal. It took us almost 45 minutes to get the thing lit because I had never seen it before. And the guy that was leading it, he was a second cook. They said he'd done it once before, so they put him on the train. And all it did is we get things raw on one side and burnt on the other as we were trying to make the meals. We had an awful lot of food loss on that first shipment. But the thing was is that these diners were the mainstream. They had the Oriental Limited as they would run with, and it worked just fine. Once you get into it, it worked pretty good. Anyway, they were 46, 36. They cut them back, so they were always changing it. So the second Empire Builder cars that they came out with, the 48, that was the one that was the easiest one to be able to predict and see how it works. Okay, as I showed you that one picture of the lady, and I was very nicely suggested that it was just a prop. How many of you have heard of magic chefs?
Yes,
You have? Who said yes?
I did.
Okay, tell me about it.
The refrigerator.
Sorry?
Brand.
Brand.
Brand of
Kitchen equipment.
Oh, okay, no, not even close. Not even close, I'm sorry. I had never heard of it. And the thing was is that I was talking with the chef one day, and I saw him talking to some extra people. And I was wondering, why is this guy talking to these people? And they had clothes like this. They were wearing clothes like that, so they looked like passengers, and it was a man and a woman. And I said, I don't mean to be nosy, but are they relatives of yours or something like that? And so he says, well, you want to be careful what you do because those are the magic chefs. And they were the police from the Great Northern Railroad. What was happening was there were waiters that were going in and they were stealing the silverware. And they caught a couple people, and it was just shortly the next night we were going through the stretch of, I think, North Dakota, and the train just for no reason, there were no lights or anything, it just came to a stop. Because we had the window, we could look out and there was a crossroad. We saw somebody get out and walk away, and then the train started speeding on. And we found out the next morning that they had caught the guy who was stealing all the silverware, and they put him out, and any place, the next crossing is where they put him out. I'd never heard that they would do that. But the thing is, it's Great Northern property, they can do anything they want to. You're on there working and you're stealing their stuff, they're going to fire you on the spot. He was terminated immediately. I asked some questions about how often that happened. They said not too often because the word spread on it. But it gets into a matter of how the railroads were doing. And financially, they were always a loss operation, but it was accelerating. So they brought this in. And I was going to say, does anybody want to guess who could have been the, what would you look for if you were looking for magic chefs? Out of that crowd, I think you can pick two of them out.
Well, there probably would be male.
Male was right, yep, there's one guy, yep. And, so it could be one of two guys.
Dark suit.
I would have picked this couple right here, because they look like they're dressed kind of okay for that time period. The reason I spotted them when I was working on the ranch car, the woman was just looking like she was looking right straight through everybody, trying to figure out what they were doing. She had a kind of suspicious look on her face. And I saw them two more times on two different rides. So I think they were just on the train all summer long. And they were watching anybody who was working for the railroad. I myself called my attention to the chef because I went back that night, the first time I saw him, and I went through I opened up my bag to brush my teeth. And I said, somebody's gone through here. And right away I was thinking it was one of the cooks or the waiters or something like that. And then I found out it was the magic chefs, as they call them. I don't know if they made any difference in the bottom line, but they sure sent an awful lot of rattling concerns through the employees. Okay, the last thing that I did as a cook is that I was asked to go up and here I was halfway through my second year, and I was just happy to be a third cook. And then Emmett Dixon again, he says, we've got some special needs over on something called Red River. I had no idea what that was. He says, we'd like you to promote you to a second cook. Well, I kind of thought it was longer than that, but I said, sure, fine, I'll go ahead and do that. And got on the Red River, and I don't know how many of you know, it's a cargo, and then turns around and comes back the same day. At one time, it used to go all the way up to the Red River, but passenger traffic was falling off quite a bit. So I said, okay, I'll go ahead and try it, and the first trip was not too bad. I had probably about a dozen customers come in through the kitchen and the car. There were 3 of us doing it, and then when I went back to talk to Emmett Dixon for scheduling the next time around, the next week, he said, yeah, we've got another slot for you to run the Red River. So I said, fine, I'll go ahead and try it. Guess how many customers I served? Smallest number in the world, 0. Absolutely, there were nobody on the train hardly. There were about 3 or 4 passengers, and no one ate anything. So that's what was going on, why I was promoted to second cook, because it made me feel good for about a day. When I found out the bitter truth of the reality, I was being manipulated. But that was okay. There was nothing to see, there wasn't anyone to talk to, that kind of stuff. So, but still, one of those joyous learning experiences. Then it gets back to the operations again. This is training. There was passenger cars, service operations, and there was in 1963. The number I heard was $1.5 million. But they knew that they were losing money all the time. It was something that they said was like advertising, and they were going to go ahead and suffer that loss. Then we go down to the Western Star, and the reason why I brought this one up is because if you look real close and use a little bit of imagination, it's possible that you can see me right in this car right here, the diner. This one, yeah. This one right here, yeah. And this was taken by Nielsen, and it was one of the times that I was on the train. And I never got a chance to take a picture of myself, and I could be in there, but you have to take a little bit of guessing with that one. And then what we did, returning from the West Coast to the last week of December of 1963, we ran through some snow. It was relaxing to work towards the end in the Christmas time, because most people were at their destination. They were celebrating Christmas, they were getting ready for New Year's, and there were very few passengers. So we had kind of an easy time of it. We still put up a fair amount of dinner, but nothing like in the summertime. And then insofar as going all the way down in the builder, down to Chicago, this is a switch. This is where we would swing, they called it. And this is a Burlington locomotive, you can tell here. It's not the GN, so this is down in a city called Savannah, Illinois, which is, I think, probably about 10 or 15 minutes outside of Chicago. And this is just happened to be a photograph. And I kind of like this one. It was 1963, pardon?
Couple hours out of Chicago. It's way on the west side.
Okay, thank you.
The river.
And it's
Okay.
on the Mississippi.
All right, thank you. It's a couple hours outside of Chicago. As I said, I'm still learning, it's only taken me 50 years. Anyway, this is just a nice day, and then we go to here. This is actually my last trip. This is working for the Great Northern. This is halfway through. There's a little snow here. And then the reason why I've got this one in here, because this is my last day, January 1st, 1964. And on that note, I wanted to say that this little artwork right here, I don't know how many of you have that. I've seen some of these time schedule sheets, and some people have this one. But anybody remember what your payroll check looked like?
Yeah, not very much.
Ask me if that question.
What about your check?
Yours.
You asked the right question. I just happen to have my last paycheck. I do. I do. And if anyone is interested, and I have run a couple copies off, and I'm not saying anything about that because there was any money, it's just worth about $1.50. There was a mix-up on the dates, but I kept it anyway because the artwork that I have on the check is exactly the same as this one right here. You'll see that if you want to come up and look at these things. With that, I think I'm, oh yeah, these are the cars I worked at, the standard heavyweight, the Builder 47, and then in 1950 it was reworked. And then wait a minute, that's good, here we go. Heavyweight Builder, Star was reworked in 47, Red River, and then the ranch car. So those are the cars that I worked. And then this is a nice one too. Again, Nielsen. This is the reason why I put it out there because, lucky me, I could have been on either train. Every day, the two trains met at 4:35 Mountain Standard Time. And I remember being on the train and seeing the other one. We were warned that we're getting close. If you look out there, you can see someone. Don't stick your hand out, though. Okay, I thank you very much. I appreciate your time. We have some items up here that you can look at, some of my books collection here. I've got possibly a drawing that was the earliest color of the Empire Builder, and some for this is in the Look magazine. This is an original book. It has the original magazines in here from 1943, and if you look at the condition, they look like brand new. Question in the back?
I just wanted to have you demonstrate that kitchen shuffle.
Oh, you're gonna, okay. All right.
You can demonstrate it. We'll do a little thing here.
I'm the steward, and I've come in with an order. I've got a grilled steak that I want medium, and then I have a rainbow trout, and then I have a chicken dish, and that's what we're having at the banquet tonight. So you're going to prepare our banquet meal. How did you do it?
Okay, it's only been 50 years, and I don't remember everything you said other than the medium steak, fish, and there was a third thing?
Chicken.
Chicken, okay. And then I would just say, order up. And I would holler it like that, and whoever was responsible for those, then they would start the process. Is that good? Not perfect, but I'm a couple years old.
Whoever wants to see.
Go through all the different foods, the meats and so on, cut them, do all that preparation from the commissary, and then they had to bring them down to the train. And they had to carry them from whatever shuttle that they were using and put them in, and they had to store them on the train. So when the train came in the next day to pick up that particular dining car, which had the food on it, it was ready to go. So there was all that preparation. I was lucky. I didn't have to do it once. I just missed it because they were changing it, and it turned out better for the railroad because they had different people. They weren't paying the high-priced cooks. They had some other commissary people come and do it for them cheaper. Yes, yes. Any other questions?
Where was that commissary?
Where was the commissary? Did you know where the Emmett Dixon had his office in the brick building? It's right next to where the see, here we go again. I don't know the street names down there because I didn't live in St. Paul. But it was about 2 blocks away from the depot, so it wasn't that far away. Is that good enough answer?
Okay, it was to the east.
Yeah. I don't remember this. It was 3rd Street and St. Paul Avenue or something like that.
I
Yes.
always thought the commissary was on the east end of the passenger car yard in Mississippi Street.
Yes, they were. Yeah, I heard they were near. I never went to them myself, but I heard they were in that location, yes. Question?
Did your trains in 62 get the advantage of the fresh fish by the agent, caught by the agent at, where was it, Stryker, Montana?
Oh, that was the eastbound Empire Builder would get the fresh rainbow trouts every day.
Were they doing that in 62?
We would stop for primarily berries to make pies. That's the thing, because I made them. So that's the thing I was interested in. There were some people talking about fish. It could have happened at that time. Okay. Okay? Yes? More? I'm going to invite the guy that got me the job 55 years ago. is sitting right over there. Mike Jensen. Mike gave a presentation in 2010, and and I happened to come. I have not seen Mike for 55 years until about 2 days ago. We lost touch, seriously, we did. I've always been looking for the guy. And so he's going to come on up here and he's going to help with, I think he's going to learn how to do the dining car shuffle, which I think most of you know how to do it, but we'll do it anyway. It's kind of a neat thing. And the whole reason why you want to do the dining car shuffle is that when you're walking around and you've got a boiling pot in your hand and you're trying to move and you're only 2 or 3 inches away from the guy next to you, you want to make sure you don't boil him or scald him or anything. So you want to know how you can do the movements of your legs. Okay, this is Michael right here. Come on over here. I don't know if you can see how it's going to work. I'm going to suggest that this is the device. But the first thing you start off with is that you have to know how to, you can come along with me if you want to. You want to be able to move your knees first. Remember, you got to put your hand out there like you got a hot boiling water in your hand here, so you won't spill anyone. The second thing you need to do after you're doing this, and it's nice and easy, is you want to start moving your knees sideways. So you don't rotate them, it's a perpendicular, so you go backwards, forwards, and then you go from side to side is what you do. So you have kind of an oval shape there. Okay, and when you're doing that, now you have your arm out, put your arm out in front of you. Yeah, there you go. Kind of move this, make this movement like this, and you're moving along with the train. I mean, what train is standing still that's any fun to ride anyway? So as you're walking, you've got to walk like this, kind of zigzag and crazy like, and that's the way you were able to get from one spot, even if it was 2 inches away, to the next spot, and you wouldn't spill anything, and you wouldn't boil anyone, and you wouldn't cut them. And so they're your friends for life. Okay, that'll take care of it.
Just a comment.
Michael,
You have a comment? Allow comments on that? We never did the dining car shuffle or the kitchen shuffle on either the Empire Builder that I was on in the diner or in the ranch car. Now, maybe you learned it from either spending too much time in the pantry or the coal fumes from the coal-fired stove. The only coal fire I saw in a car to cook with was my fortune to be a couple weeks on a special train for the Boy Scouts that had 2 full coal-fired stoves in them, and that was one of my jobs as the third cook, to help get that fire going. And I was probably about as experienced. I started a few campfires, but we got those coal stoves on, but that's a whole different story.
Yep.
But John, I worked, you said I'm the one that got you interested in coming to the Great Northern.
exactly.
So I guess, and I came back for 1 year after my first, and told you up at St. John's what a great job I had and all that.
Oh,
and was paying my way through school.
Yes.
So you went years later, you went on, and I came back 1 year, and then after that, while you were cooking on the Great Northern, I was getting double the pay you were getting. I was getting $3.82 an hour on a survey crew up in the state of Alaska. So that helped me eventually get back. Now, because I took responsibility, you blame me for putting you. I'm going to give you one of these things if you're recruited as a new member. Now, I never recruited you, but in other words, you joined on your own to the society, as you did.
I did.
And now, I got a couple of mementos of you. Now, you told me you were kind of really a Western Star guy.
Yep.
I love the Empire Builder. I love the ranch car. So just so you remember, as a member of the ranch car, remember that's got a certified brand. This is from the ranch of the Empire Builder. Just so you could, there's a Jeep bar GN swizzle stick. I understand you're a teetotaler now, but you can always go back. Now,
I'm encouraged.
You've always struck me as not being an Empire Builder guy like me. I don't know what that means. So in recognition of your service on the Western Star, I've given you here 2, a black and white, Great Northern, Western Star, a couple of swizzle sticks from that too.
Is that because you don't want to have anything to do with the Western Star anymore?
Well, it was always the only time I got overtime, as I recall. We were paid by the hour. It was a 16-hour day. And essentially, maybe you got a couple hours sleep in the afternoon, but not if you had a bunch of loaded tourists. on the Western Star. The Empire Builder, you know, the real Empire Builder never stopped at Glacier Park. No, you took except for the 1960 when they had the Governor's Convention there. That was the 50th anniversary of the park. And they did stop for, I don't know if it was just the governors, but that was the only exception they made. And but other than that, no, that was for business travelers and whatever. The Western Star was for the tourists. And we had some trains that had extra dining service times, and we did stay up until maybe 10 o'clock, and I think 10 or 11 o'clock, serving food. It's the only time I got more than straight pay for anything beyond 16 hours. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming
Thank
out
you.
and helping. Thank you for all for being here. I enjoy it very much. Any questions or anything further than that, let me know. We've got up here some books that I look, some collections and so on that I enjoy. Mary suggested I bring those in. Any other questions? Thank you again. I'll turn it back to you.
Mike wants also to have his Red River button.
Red River button, yeah.
And thank you, John, and
Chip, thank you very much.
you're welcome. Now, again, the banquet is up on the top floor. You get in the elevator and you press the R.
I'd like to talk.
So,
I missed it.
that's